Chapter 40. Sacred World of the Kais. I'm not sure, my lord. I'll have to look at the current structure. I'm sure someone could be found, he says, pulling out a small book from within his robe. Find someone then, Beerus says, turning back to the Supreme Kai. Hakai! The Patera earrings in Shin's ears fade away as he flinches back from the absolute malice in Beerus's eyes. I'll not have you giving out any more helping hands, Beerus says, glaring at Shin. Now get out of my sight. My lord, Whis says, looking into the viewing orb atop his staff. The fight is continuing. Unknown. I walked up to my front door, keys already in hand, prepared to jiggle with the finicky lock that was always a struggle. I managed to get it undone, opening the door and slipping in. I dropped my backpack in the hall, slipping out of my shoes, following the smell of food wafting from the kitchen. The hallway was cramped, not quite enough to feel claustrophobic, but more than enough to feel closed in. I dropped my keys in their assigned spot, making my way into the kitchen. Just like every time I'd ever seen her, she still took my breath away. The one bright spot in my life. Hey, Maddie, I say, just watching her from the doorway. She jumps slightly, whipping around, cheap plastic spatula in her hand. Oh, Billy. Maddie, what's wrong, baby? I ask, hearing the panic in her voice. She rushes over to me, grabbing me in a hug, starting to sob. Where have you been? What do you mean? I was at work all day. I reply, puzzled. Work? Billy, you've been gone for over 10 years. You. She replies, holding me tighter. Maddie, what? No. I was just at work, right? I ask, taking her by the shoulders and pushing her back slightly so I can look at her. I can see it now, the slight signs of aging everyone gets when they reach their late 30s. I can feel my chest tightening as panic fills my body, as my breath shortens, coming in small bursts. I can't breathe. The air is almost non-existent. Billy, you need to wake up, Maddie says, catching me lightly as I collapse to the ground. Where? I ask as the world starts to fade to black around me. Wake up, she screams, her voice so far away it seems to echo. Wake up. I hear, my eyes snapping open in response. The sky above me is filled with ash and sparks, as the landscape all around shows the signs of a fight between myself and Paternus, and then the arrival of Oversis. My heart is still thudding in my chest from the dream I'd just had, but I still have the peace of mind to swipe away the alerts saying I'd healed fully. KLL. Someone asks, standing several feet to my side. I turn my head, finding the hulking massive form of Broly standing at nearly 9 feet tall, the body of Oversis held tightly in his overly large hand. Kibito's hands still hovering over my body, energy transferring from them to me in an attempt to heal me. I sit up and then hop to my feet, ignoring the slight ache I feel. Broly, are you okay? I ask, staring up at this absolute unit of a scion. I am fine for now, KLL. He replies, before looking back over my shoulder. Thank you, Kibito, for coming to my aid, I say, before turning around to face him. You were owed the help for your part in defeating Majin Buu. He replies, grimacing. I have to head back now. I feel that this may be the last time we see one another for a very long. Thank you again. I would have died had you not come when you did. I repeat, yes, you would have, Kibito replies, before disappearing in a flash of light. I grimace at the truth in his words, before turning back to Broly. Is he dead? I ask. Not yet. Shall I? Broly says, squeezing Oversis slightly. No, I'll take care of it, I tell him. Broly drops Oversis to the ground, stepping away as his body starts to shrink. I file that away for later, knowing that his newfound control will make for a good story later on. I step over to Oversis, slapping him lightly to try and wake him up. He has the knowledge I need, some threat that goes far enough to cause me to lose. He doesn't stir, and I know that while I'm much more powerful than he is, Broly as well if the damage done to him is any indicator, that he is still a threat. I push to Super Saiyan 2, placing my hand just inches from his face. I search for any sign that he may be faking, that he may be awake to answer my questions, before giving up on it. With a pulse, I release a blast of energy from my palm, engulfing his head and erasing it from existence. Quest complete. Story quest. Long-term goal, defeat the 2-star Shadow Dragon. Reward 3000,000 XP. 6078 550/4 500 000 till LVL 22. Level up alert. I tap the alert, dropping all the points I'd earned my normal slots. I didn't have any new feats available quite yet, so I saved those points for later. My battles and level had gone up, as had my power level by a good amount. I finalized everything and hit accept, the world fading back in around me. Oversis seems to turn to ash below me, the slight breeze wiping him away completely, leaving the 2-star Dragon Ball behind. Thank you for saving me, Broly, I tell him, as I pick up the Dragon Ball, dropping back to my base form. Of course, KLL. Did you not think I would come? He asks from where he is standing. I wasn't sure if my message would make it, or if Shin would be able to do anything about it, I tell him. The Kais are beholden to Beerus. I am not a Ka. I go and do as I please. He says, smiling for a moment. What happened before I arrived? It's a long story, honestly. It's been a while since you were in action. We should get out of here and talk later. I tell him, I can take us to Planet Scion. Grab my hand. Planet Scion? He asks as he moves over to me. There is a pop of displaced air as a blur slams into Broly, knocking him away from me, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris. The world slows as I push to potential unleashed, my body nearly exploding with the strain of increasing my power level so quickly. Even with the boost of energy and speed, I'm still caught slightly off guard as a broken and bloody arm extends from the dust cloud, slamming into my chin. It knocks me back, the surprise more than the strength behind the blow. I can feel Broly's power level explode where he landed, the pressure wave knocking the cloud of dust away to reveal a horror of my least expectations. Paternus is a shell of what he was, the energy that sustains him all but gone from the damage I had done to him. Seeing him, it clicks in my mind that I never got experience for beating him, that the quest to defeat him was still active. A million thoughts flash through my mind, seeing the 2-star Dragonball in his hands, the realization that his attack was never meant to hurt me. I'm already halfway back to him, the world around me moving like a frame-to-frame slow-motion video, but even I can tell that it's far too late. He presses the 2-star ball against his chest, the ball seeming to be sink in like a hot knife through butter. His chest expands to accept it, before shrinking back to normal size. A deep blue-hued glow starts from his chest, expanding outward, leaving his body in a roiling wall of energy that quickly sweeps me away. It doesn't hurt, not even close to being more than lukewarm. Quest failed. Story quest. Long-term goal, defeat the 1-star Shadow Dragon. Reward 0 XP. Shit. I think as I swipe away the alert, bringing up both hands in preparation to wipe everything in front of me out of existence. Stop. I hear, the voice of Paternus filtering through the clearing field of energy. As the energy finally settles, Paternus is standing within a slight crater, barely more than an indentation in the ground. Broly is in his legendary Super Saiyan form, standing a few dozen feet back from where Paternus is standing. Paternus is bobbing his head, almost as though to a song that no one else can hear. The damage that once belied his body is gone, healed through his absorption of the 2-star. I see now, he whispers, his eyes widening slightly as he turns towards me. I thought perhaps Oversis was mad, but no, he was anything but. Well, no, he was certainly maddened. He was weak and made the best of the information he had. What are you talking about, Paternus? I ask, dropping into my fighting stance. Stop, you fool. You were barely able to keep up with me in your Super Saiyan God form. As you are now, you're nothing more than a bug beneath my feet. But you asked, so I'll explain. Paternus says, cocking his head ever so slightly. Oversis had the knowledge and experience of the entirety of the universe. Every moment of every being to ever exist, from the time of its creation to the time it will inevitably end. He had the abilities of them all, some so rare that even with the knowledge now, I can barely unravel how they work. He says, as his body begins to slowly transform. His body seems almost like putty, as it shifts between forms rapidly, all the while continuing to speak. However, he had very little strength on his own. Where I am one of the strongest being in the universe, he was barely stronger than you as a Super Saiyan. Paternus says, returning to his original form. Several beings in the universe can see the future, and the many different paths it can take. I can see why it would drive him made to experience it. Yeah, he said that, yet he didn't see himself dying. I reply, glancing at Broly over his shoulder. Quite. Oversis couldn't see that the gods are outside of time and space, that their influence subverts time, and can't be predicted. He replies, looking over his shoulder at Broly as well. No matter. I'll remove the Kais and Beerus, and take this universe for my own. But first, the air around him sparks, before what I can only describe as a cloud of energy engulfs him, sucking him away as though he never existed. KLL? Where did he go? Broly asks, looking around as well. I'm not sure. We don't have much time though. I dash. Tribal planet Hick. A small village of huts sits in the shadow of a mountain, the plains stretching far off into the horizon in the distance. The sun is setting, and the bonfires that light the village are lit, as the young men and women gather around the elder. Sitting on seats of carved stumps, they prepare again for another lesson. The elder had arrived many moons ago, offering his help in a time of great need. Rhykaisis he was called, a word that he taught them meant soul, a concept he was still trying to explain. Each night since his arrival, he had sat them down, teaching them about plants, growing, cleaning, and hunting. Already their crops had grown twice as strong and fast, by carrying water from the river to wet their plots daily, instead of waiting for the rains that came several times a month. Today children, I'll be teaching you about, looks like I won't be, he says as another figure enters the light of the fire. I had wondered when one of us would decide to turn on the others, Rhykaisis says, standing from his own seat and walking towards the newcomer. Goddess and Adversus did so within the hour of our birth, brother, Paternus says. Is there anything that can be said to turn you from this path? Rhykaisis asks, knowing already that the answer would be no. As Paternus shoves his hand into Rhykaisis' chest, ripping the Dragonball from within and pressing it to his own chest, he asks, if you knew the answer was no, why waste the time asking? Earth. Quest failed. Story quest. Long-term goal, defeat the 3-star Shadow Dragon. Reward 0 XP. Oh god. He's absorbing the other Shadow Dragons. I say, turning back to Broly. What? KLL, what are you saying? What is a Shadow Dragon? Broly asks, looking around us. How could you know that? Quest failed. Story quest. Long-term goal, defeat the 6-star Shadow Dragon. Reward 0 XP. We need to go now, Broly. Grab my hand. I say, reaching out. With a pop of air, we disappear. Planet Scion. We reappear with a pop. The crowded streets of our new capital city teeming with masses. My own power level is completely hidden, but I know that scouters and sensors the planet over are alerting Scion Command that a being with a massive power level has appeared, in the form of Broly. Within seconds of us appearing, there is a multitude of pops as several Scions appear, preparing to do battle with an unknown person with a massive battle power. Halt! I call the moment they appear. Command 718, stand down. See Captain KLL? One of them asks, stepping forward. Give me your scouter quickly, I order. He immediately pops it off, handing it to me. I place it on, my fingerprints alerting it to a new user, already reprogramming it from the local network into a clone of my own scouters. A few deft taps, every second counting down like nail in my coffin, as I open the emergency line to Plan B, and every emergency broadcasting system planet-wide. We had no time left, and I would need every bit of help I could get. Plan B. We have a Class A threat. Lock your scouters to the power in Central City, and follow in 10 seconds. We are going to C-18. I repeat, C-18. I say, my voice echoing across the entire planet. The crowd around us barely reacts, most of that sentence being gibberish to them. For some high-ranking Scions, they know that I'm calling for backup, that the galaxy itself is threatened, and that in 10 seconds they need to use instant transmission to travel to planet C-18 in the Ives system. The rest would be able to continue their day in peaceful ignorance. Reaching out, I grab Broly's arm, and with a pop, we disappear once more. Quest failed. Story quest. Long-term goal, defeat the 7-star Shadow Dragon. Reward 0 XP. C-18 Ives system. One of the few moonless planets in local space with a functional atmosphere, C-18 has long been used as a stopping point for local transport. The population fluctuates, but is generally less than 1,000 people. We arrive in one of the more desolate areas, as far from what little civilization exists here. KLL. Broly says as we reappear, you need to slow down and explain what is happening. I'm sorry, Broly, but we don't have much time. Paternus will be back, and he's going to be beyond strong. I don't know if we can stop him. I say, waiting the remaining few seconds for the arrival of my backup. How could you possibly know that? Broly asks. I just do, I say as everyone else appears. Broly, how strong are you? How strong? He asks. I don't know. I've never had someone actually read my power. I nod, thinking back to when he went off on planet Vegeta. He was stronger then than I am right now at my max. He might not be able to keep up with me as a Super Saiyan God, but he'll definitely be able to help with this fight. Quest alert. Story quest. Long-term goal, defeat Omega Purunga. Reward, 15 million XP. I flinch at the alert when it comes, telling me what I already knew. Paternus had absorbed the remaining Shadow Dragons, much like Sin Shinran did in Dragon Ball GT, and was most likely unfathomably powerful. Sir, what happened on Plan Dash? One of the Scions begins to ask. I cut him off. No time. We need to act now. With a quick nod, they crowd around me, pushing to Super Saiyan. The energy starts to be pumped into me, and I can feel the beginnings of the ritual start. I close my eyes as the energy crests, washing over me like a warm blanket of water. Again, much like before, the energy lifts me into the air, separating me from the group. I open my eyes as I reach the peak, and find myself face to face with Paternus. It's Omega now. He corrects, staring at me. He smirks, cocking his head slightly. I wondered if I should stop you, as I saw you disappearing from the future once more. In that form, you are a god, and much like the Kais or Beerus, your actions shape fate, instead of being influenced by it. He looks away for a moment, before looking back. But no, I lost to this form once before. How could I not at least let you reach it again, to show you just how outclassed you really are? Fuck you, Paternus, I say, taking the wind out of his sail. As much as I like a good villainous monologue, I don't have time for this one. I see. So be it then, he says before his aura explodes around him. The deep purple-black energy, much like the black smoke that encompassed Shadow Shinran, fills the area immediately around him like a sticky ink that paints the sky. My own fiery aura erupts behind me, the bright light of it fighting back against the encroaching darkness. With a shout, I push off against the very air around me, thundering towards Omega. He turns slightly, readying himself for my incoming attack. I reach him almost instantly, my fist missing by a hair as he manages to move just barely enough to dodge. I rotate, catching the elbow he tried to bring down on my shoulder with my free hand, taking a further swipe at him since I'm so close. Again he dodges, pulling his stomach in slightly. A flurry of attacks miss, are dodged or are blocked between us at a speed faster than thought. I can only imagine the sounds of our punches as we block the hits. I can only hope that Broly and the others are doing okay down there. The thought was a small distraction, which gave Omega the opening he needed to lay into me like a brick. One of the hardest hits I've ever taken, launching me back about 20 feet. As I pull back, Omega drops his guard and shakes his head at me. Are you even trying right now? I don't bother answering, instead of using instant transmission to pop into existence right next to him. I lash out with a kick, ready to take his fucking head off, when his head seems to just appear in place, blocking it with zero effort. His grip is like steel to me as he rears back and throws me to the ground. I have practically all the time in the world to right myself and land safely on the ground. Omega seems to sigh before he continues. Can't you tell how outclassed you are right now? Even with all that power, you're not the challenge I had hoped for. It's really no surprise that Oversys was worried about this universe. I don't care how strong you are, Paternus. I'm going to find a way to defeat you. I yell, preparing to launch myself at him again. He seems to phase through reality, appearing inches away from me, his fist reared back before it slams into my cheek. I feel half my face shatter, muscles tearing in my neck as I'm punched to the floor in an instant. As the ground flies up to meet me, I can only think one word. How? You have awoken. My eyes snap open, the alert already fading away, as a rough hand grabs the back of my neck and tosses me to the side. I roll before hopping back to my feet. That was for calling me Paternus. It's Omega, and I'd suggest you remember that for what time you have left. Omega says, glaring at me. I glance over to where I sense Broly, seeing his eyes on the battle. He looks like wants to jump in, but hasn't yet. Fuck. You. Paternus. I say, glaring back at Omega. I don't dash. You're not a challenge as you are. Omega says, look at you. Super Saiyan God slipped away from you, and you didn't even notice. You're so disconnected from this reality that you might as well just die and be done with it. You're no longer a challenge. Then I'll be your challenge. We both hear, turning slightly to face the voice. Ah, a worthy opponent. Omega says, turning to face Broly. Perhaps this will keep me entertained while you figure things out. As he starts to walk forward, he pauses, turning back to me. You let the Kais play with your mind. Before they touched you, you were a danger to them. You let them play with your mind under the pretense of healing you. And as they are well known to do, they used it to their advantage. Think back, when they came to Earth to use the Z-Fighters to defeat Majin Buu. The greater good matters most to them. What are you saying? I ask, trying to put together what he is talking about. Gamer's mind. The Supreme Kai brainwashed you to be terrified of turning it back on. Yet without it, without that callousness, without that uncaring attitude, you can't see things clearly anymore. I, however, can see everything that has ever happened and will ever happen. Until you unlock your powers again, that is. He answers, before turning back to Broly. That's not true. I yell back. I can turn it on whenever I want. Omega ignores me completely, squaring off with Broly. Broly's massive form ripples, his bright golden aura sparkling in the air. There is a thrum of energy as his aura sharpens, his hair following right along. His form shudders, seeming to grow slightly more. That's right, Broly. Keep going, keep pushing. Give me a challenge while I wait for KLL to figure things out. Omega says, his own energy increasing at a prodigious rate. Broly crosses his arms in front of his face, his massive muscles nearly impeding the movement. Before, with a yell, his energy skyrockets. A guttural scream, echoing across the landscape, follows. His hair begins to grow, his body flashing with bright golden-green energy. As he ascends to a form even I can't reach. The transformation takes but a minute, and even I'm in awe of how much power Broly truly has. Even with legendary Super Saiyan 3, his power seems to continue to rise at a steady rate. Will this be enough to challenge you, monster? Broly asks. Omega smirks, his answer obvious to anyone that could see it. They stand silently still, only the soft breeze wafting through causing any movement. With no warning, Broly is at Omega's throat, his hand wrapped tightly around it as he carries him forward, slamming him into the ground. The ground shakes as Omega Rains blows on Broly from beneath him, every crash sending a jolt through my body. Broly is clearly out of practice as far as fighting goes, but his strength and speed make up for it. He yanks Omega out of the ground, ignoring the damage being done to him as he uses his left hand to slam a punch into his foe, screaming the entire time with each hit. Omega blasts him with dark energy, forcing Broly to release him, before launching himself back into the fight. The ground splits with the energy of the attack, and I float up slightly so I don't fall. This is my fight. I think watching these two titans go at it. I should be out there doing something. Yes, you should be. I hear in my mind, the snide voice of Omega easily identifiable. But you won't be, and you can't even see it. You claimed you could turn Gamer's mind on whenever you want, but in the past 2 minutes, you haven't even tried. You've stood idly by watching. Shut up. Of course I can... I'm going to turn it on right now just to shut you up. I say, gritting my teeth. I push but pause right before I turn it on. Do I actually need this? It locks away my emotions. It made me a monster. I look up sharply, hearing Broly's scream of pain and rage as Omega manages to catch him with a hard punch to the face, knocking him back momentarily. Did you catch that, Billy? I hear in my head again. The moment you tried, you stopped. The Kais lied to you. Beerus wants you died. The Scions have betrayed you multiple times. Your only friend died at the hands of Majin Buu, that you could have beaten had you really tried. You're blind time and time again. When will you learn that the only one you should trust is yourself? No. Shut up about things you know nothing about. I yell back, pushing again to turn on Gamer's mind. As I push, I feel a sharp bolt of panic rising in my system. I push again, falling to my knees as I push past the rising emotions that fight against me. I slam my fists against the ground, screaming out as I push to turn on the Gamer's mind. You'll fail, just like before. I wonder which of your friends will die for you this time. I hear it, almost like glass shattering deep in the recesses of my mind. It's quiet, almost a dull thrum, before it echoes outward like a pin drop in a silent room. Walls I didn't know were there disappear. A restriction I didn't recognize falls away. Warm blood pours from my nose, coating my face, as I push every ounce of will into breaking a limit that shouldn't have been there to start with. Gamer's mind activated. A fog that coated my mind fades away, the world coming into stark clarity as my mind categorizes and sorts my tumultuous thoughts into neat little spots in my mind. My eyes glaze for a moment before everything comes back into focus. My body's energy, the swirling maelstrom that it's always been, doubles, triples in size around me. I look down at my own body, seeing it as though for the first time, as everything I've missed since the battle against Majin Buu comes to the forefront of my mind. There is a roar in the distance as Broly is again slapped away from Omega, fighting a battle that should have been mine. Omega was a monster, but he wasn't wrong. The Kais had used me, and then locked away a part of my power, without even knowing what it really did. I could even see it now, the reason they would do what they did. A Scion, one of a race well known for their enjoyment of war and death, with power that rivals that of the strongest beings in the universe. Imagine one that can turn of their empathy at will, that can look at things from a point of view free of restrictions and emotions. A dangerous man indeed, but I could tell that we were all wrong. No matter how I looked at the world, it was still a game. Gamer's mind reminded me of that every time I turned it on. Ignoring it had cost me so much already, and to ignore an advantage was to fail. KLL, help me, Broly yells, dragging my attention away from introspection. I look up to see Omega holding Broly aloft by his throat, both looking damaged, but Omega having obviously come out on top. Yes, KLL, come to help your friend. Surely you'd like to have saved at least one of them. Omega says, floating slowly to the ground. I glance between them, wondering what it is that Omega is looking for. As he is, Broly is nearly 10 times stronger than I am at my current max. Omega isn't too much stronger, but his repertoire of abilities, future knowledge, and evilness gives him an advantage. What could it be that he sees that I don't? I glance at my stat sheet, my mind working a million thoughts and ideas a second, trying to gather the info I need to win this. I glance between Omega and my stats when it finally does click. I was a fool. As easily as I breathe, it was like a switch being thrown in the back of my mind. My aura, the mix of white and green that was standard for me, shifts hue into a bright pink. It swirls around me, seeming to shoot high into the cloudless sky above us as an ethereal energy coats and fills my body. Limits released. Super Saiyan Rose form unlocked. Plus 10 energy modification. A well of energy I didn't even know was there explodes out of me, melting the ground as it passes over. There are no screams, no powering up. 1 second I'm in my base form, cowering from a foe that should crush me. The next I'm so far beyond my own limits that I'm practically a god. A god finally awoken, Omega says, dropping Broly at his feet. You've disappeared from my future sight again, KLL. As I said before, gods such as we are not the pawns of fate. We do as we please, and the universe will adjust for it. I wonder if this form will be the challenge I want. I'm not a god, Omega. I say, looking up at him. Oh, then what would you call yourself? He asks, scoffing at me. His body is launched away, the crack of my knuckles against his face, not even reaching my ears before his body is out of sight in the distance. I'm the gamer, bitch.